Hello, my name is Professor Sylvester Carl Henderson. I am the CEO of Professor for Life Incorporated. And at Professor for Life Incorporated, we interview very well-known academics and professionals from all over the world. And today I'm so honored to be able to interview Dr. Eugene JM Lewis from Huntsville, Alabama. Dr. Lewis is an international program manager and logistics management specialist for the U.S. Army Aviation and Missile Command. And he's also a former assistant professor for Oakwood University. Welcome, Dr. Lewis.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that introduction.
Wow. Dr. Lewis, could you introduce yourself to our digital media academic world? And please
Sure.
describe your education and training, where you went to college, where you received all your degrees and what have you.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm originally from Seattle, Washington. I am a transplant here to the Huntsville, Madison area. My entire family, most of my family members, went to Oakwood University, which is a historically Black college and university here in Huntsville, Alabama. It is the only African American HBCU in the world that's Seventh-day Adventist Christian based. And so I'm a proud alumnus of Oakwood University. Upon completion of my studies there, I've received a Bachelor of Science in Finance and Computer Information Systems. Then I went on and got my Master of Science in MIS, Management Information Systems. And then I did an MBA in Marketing, an MBA in Information Systems, and then a Ph.D. in Technology with the emphasis in Marketing Information Systems. So very strong marketing background in technology. I enjoy the graphic design, multimedia aspects of the marketing information systems world. And so been very fortunate to work in the career that I had the opportunity to work in. And also, I consider myself pretty blessed because I teach I've taught at several schools actually. So I've taught at Lindsey Wilson in Columbia, Kentucky. I currently teach at Edward Waters University in Jacksonville, Florida, and Capital Tech University with my doctoral students in Washington, D.C. in the Laurel, Maryland area.
Wow. Dr. Lewis, could you tell us where you received your master's and your doctorate from?
Okay, so I received my master's and my MBA from Florida Tech University, and I also received my PhD from Capital Tech in DC, so in Laurel, Maryland.
Wow, okay. Well, it seems like you've had quite a professional journey there. God bless you. Can you describe your work and obligations as an Army International Program Manager and a former and current college professor? Could you talk about those responsibilities?
Yes, sir. So I have to make sure I'm politically correct here. So they let us share some things, but I guess simply put, I'm the intermediary between the United States government and the foreign countries. So basically, my job as a program manager, international program manager, is to manage military platforms for foreign countries. So. And that's pretty much what I do. And I've been working in this environment for almost 20 years now. So, yeah.
Wow. And what are some of the courses that you've taught at Oakwood University? And what are some of the courses that you teach currently as a professor?
So currently now, I've taught a plethora of all different courses across the spectrum of business and technology and legal courses, as well as logistics and supply chain management. So I teach operations management. I taught that. Currently right now at Waters, I teach a capstone course, which encompasses all the MBA courses. So you kind of get an opportunity to kind of see how students are able to be able to take all the information they've learned over the course of their MBA program into the capstone course. I teach a global globalization and technology course, which is a favorite of mine. I enjoy that course. And I'm also teaching a business legal course right now. So yeah, those are the courses that I'm currently teaching.
And what's the name of the college that you're teaching at now?
That's Edward Waters. So Edward Waters University. That's in Jacksonville, Florida. It's the very first HBCU in the state of Florida.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so there's a lot of historical implications there. Yes, there was the very first, if I'm not mistaken, that it was the very first HBCU in the state of Florida, Edward Waters.
Wow. Dr. Lewis, who inspired you to work for the United States Army, and how has your military employment shaped your leadership philosophy?
I would say, well, my dad is probably a huge catalyst in that. He was, we're Air Force brats. My dad was in the Air Force for almost, 9-10 years. So the first part of my life, we got a chance to experience military life. Was something that always appealed to me. And then when my father got his call to the ministry, we transitioned into, I transitioned to being a pastor's kid. So you talk about a dichotomy there. You go from being a military brat to now you're a preacher's kid, and then all the stereotypes that come with that. So, it was it was an experience to say the least. But I've enjoyed both. My dad just recently retired from ministry after 39 years. I think what I'm most proud of my parents. They've been together. They've been married for 48 years now. So, which is it's rare in this day and age, especially with everything going on in the world. So. I'm very proud of them for figuring out, where a lot of us have failed, myself included. So,
the same way. Don't feel bad.
So, I've always intrigued and always just honored that with my parents being such a great example to me. So, they really are my biggest inspirations, really. In terms of what's allowed me to be able to matriculate through all the academic journeys that I've had over a broad spectrum of academic of academic prowess. So that's just me in a nutshell. Pretty humble guy, pretty chill. I pretty much stay to myself. I don't get into too much. Not anymore.
Okay, all right. I assume that your father is very structured and disciplined as a ex-military man, and he probably took that in. Now, if I'm understanding, you grew up in the African Methodist Episcopal denomination, or was it AME Zion?
Neither. So Seventh-day Adventist.
Adventist. Okay.
Yeah, SDA. So
okay.
As a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, my dad was. So. Since retired, but yeah, that was the experience. But like I said, I've been very fortunate. I had a wonderful life growing up. I mean, we didn't have a lot growing up, but we always had what we needed. I think that's something that I've actually taken as I've gotten older. I really appreciate and understand much better as an adult. You may not have everything you want, but do you have what you need? So
that's a blessing. How do you balance the discipline and structure of military employment?
Oh, great question. I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know how to answer that. To be honest, it's constantly changing. I mean, like now, I manage about 5 different country programs right now, so that's new for me. But you find ways to be, making sure you have a good team. I'm only as good as my team, so. My team is very good. I got a great support in terms of my supervisor. He's a great guy, and he's helped me out tremendously in terms of pouring into me, empowering me to do what I need to do in order to support different countries around the world. So I'm probably one of the more fortunate ones, I would say. So I'm pretty grateful for that.
Wow, thank you. What advice? As we continue, what advice did you give young Black males considering a career with the United States Army?
Well, I would I would encourage them to definitely spend some time in prayer. Make sure this is what you really want to do. I've enjoyed it, and I tell anybody this. The thing I think what I love most about my job is I never know what I'm going to do until I get to work in the morning. I never know. Every day is different, and I think because of that, I've stayed in this career path so as long as I have. Um, and I love the challenge and problem solving and trying to figure out ways of mitigating risk and how to come up with strategic ways of being able to take care of customers' needs. So those are major points for me that I just absolutely love and appreciate. But I would say with young people, especially if they're considering a career in government, make sure it's really what you really want to do. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities in government across the board. You can go a lot of different agencies. I mean, the government is huge. So there's always going to be a place for you in terms of that will be able to hone in on your talents and your human capital. It's just a matter of making sure it's really what you want to do.
Wow. As professional in your experience, how has the Army evolved into as an employer evolved in terms of diversity, inclusion, and support for service members who are employed, let's say pursuing their higher education degree?
So from a DEI perspective, so I'm sure you know this, so that the military service has done away with the DEI proposition. So and instead, they've adopted a philosophy that, hey, if you are a person, you have the credentials and you have the background and notoriety, you're going to be hired for that position. But as far as diversity in my organization, we don't really have issues with that. Most of the individuals, especially in my office, I mean, we have a very, very diverse group across a wide array of cultures and things of that nature because of the business itself. You can't work in foreign military sales and not have people of different cultures and ethnicities and creeds working together. So in my environment, it's not really an issue. Maybe in others, maybe that would be different. I'm not sure. I couldn't speak to that, but in the foreign military sales environment, I would say we're pretty diverse.
You are deeply blessed. One of the unique things I would like our listeners to know is that you are a boxing instructor, I believe,
I am,
or a professional as well. And I thought, wow, when Dr. Daryl Norman Burrell introduced me to you, I thought, wow, this is really unique. So I'm so honored to be able to interview you. And I would like to ask this question.
Sure.
As a boxing instructor, I think for the North Huntsville, is it Onyx Boxing Club?
Yes, sir. You got it.
How do you integrate your military, I would say, discipline through employment into this form of athletic instruction?
Well, that's probably the easiest thing. So now you're talking my passion. So
okay,
now you talk about passion. So anybody who knows Dr. Lewis knows, or Coach Gene, as my young people call me, in the gym. Adopting military cadence in terms of running drills, and when we're doing calisthenics and plyometrics and different types of exercise, strength and conditioning. It really helps my young people really to be able to develop and hone in on their skills. A lot of my young people, and I work with young people who come from disadvantaged homes. That's really important to me. I was blessed to grow up where we always had access to boys and girls clubs growing up. My brother and I, we used to spend hours, playing basketball at the local youth centers and, with the boys and girls clubs. So I'm an active member, active volunteer for the city of Huntsville Parks and Rec with the boxing program. So that is the thing that I love the most. That's my passion, to give back in that way. So about 3-4 times a week, we're training, we're getting ready for competition, and also, help preparing our young people, if not for a career, as in boxing, helping them find trade schools or, universities, college, helping them with applications, or, to get into an area that a functional area that will help them provide for them and their families. So that is my most favorite thing and most to do, as a professional, is being able to give back. And that really is my passion. Anybody knows me, they're like, yeah, Jay, he's a completely different person outside of his army job. When you get him into boxing, Jim is just different. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That must have been quite a difference to work as a passionate boxing instructor as opposed to completing your doctorate degree. Man, these are two different worlds. They don't even.
They're two different worlds, but when you look at it from at its premise, right? There are a lot of the same tools and methodologies apply, right? In order to be successful in the boxing, you have to be disciplined. It's no different than being in the academic world. You know what I mean? If you're in the classroom, you got to be disciplined. You have to know your lesson plans. You got to have, make sure that you're studying, that you're preparing your students, and you're giving the most cutting edge information, so that they're able to be successful when they leave your class and matriculate on, whether it be employment within with a company or starting their own business. And so boxing's not much different in that. You can't. I'm real big on fundamentals and technique. So if the fundamentals are not right, and guess what? You're gonna get knocked out. So you got to. So I'm a huge stickler about technique and being foundationally sound. And my guys, if they're over here right now, they'd be like, Dr. Henderson, like, coach is not lying. Like, he's be honest. If we don't, you're keeping your hands up, making sure you turn your punches over, making sure using the ankles and using good footwork and things like that. So those are things we really, I'm really a stickler about, from a discipline and focus standpoint.
Wow. Now, may I ask this question before we go? I'm kind of sort of gearing off because this is so fascinating to me. But did you ever box yourself?
No, I didn't get an opportunity to box professionally or in the amateurs. I started late. I got started late. So when I was younger, I wanted to do it. My dad was like, "You're too smart. I'm not going to let you do that." So I never got to box as a young person. I just watched a lot of boxing, loved it. But when I got to college is when I picked it up. And I got pretty good. So I had a really great coach, and Coach Jeff Teague, who I'll forever be grateful to. He was like, you're pretty good. He said, but you're older. He was like, why don't I teach you how to, or train you how to be a coach? He said, you've been in the ring, you've sparred, you've done all the things. He said, you'll be able to give back quite a bit to these young people, especially knuckleheads that we have coming in the gym, because you know how to manage them, and you know how to, reach those type of kids and stuff like that. So, and that's what he did. So he like I said, he poured into me, and he helped me and guided me, and I've been doing it ever since.
Wow. What are some of the most rewarding challenges you've faced in mentoring and instructing Black male boxers, especially those from underprivileged environments?
Wow. Well, let me start with my ladies. I will say that, and I guess for the ladies and the young men, really, the biggest challenge is just that there's just not enough fathers who are represented. And I've worked in almost, say, 17 years of coaching boxing. I've probably only worked with 5 dads my entire 17 years as a boxing instructor and trainer. There just weren't. A lot of single moms came to me, with their daughters or their young sons, and, their kids were experiencing getting bullied and stuff at school. I also teach self-defense as well. To give them something that they can, feel comfortable with and confident, that, if put in a situation, they could defend themselves. And so I give them that. But I would say that is probably the most challenging aspect about what it is that, being a boxing instructor and coach is just not really having a lot of male figures dads, godparents, godfathers, whatever, being present, to work with with these young people. So, but that's okay. God is good, and where there's a will, there's a way. So, we've managed to get this far. So we've been in operation for almost on the North Huntsville program for almost close to 14 years now. So, we've been doing it for a while. So we're very we're grateful for that.
Now, is your boxing program, is it your own program, or is it part of the Parks and Recreation Department for Huntsville, the city of Huntsville, Alabama?
It's both. So it's my program, my brand. I established it. I just wanted the program under the city to get the support from the city, because for a long time, I spent thousands of dollars out of pocket taking kids to, events, boxing events and things like that. So when they had to compete, so now that the city is behind us, now they've taken on some of those expenses. So it's made it a lot easier, a lot better for me. But in the early years, I did everything myself. So, but that was my belief in the program, because I believe that the program really could be a catalyst for change.
Wow. Dr. Lewis, you are an amazing, I'm sure, athletic instructor, an amazing professional, and you have a very unique journey. A very unique journey.
Yes.
What emerging trends in higher education do you believe will most impact the next generation of United States Army employees?
Wow. At the core, I think technology is going to be the most impactful. And when I mean that, with the institution of artificial intelligence, and then with this big, huge cyber security, industry that's just expanding leaps and bounds, I think that is really where you're going to see most of your trends going forward. You're going to see a lot more emphasis put on security of information systems, databases. You're going to see a lot more emphasis put on how information is being sent and how it's being received. So those are going to be, I believe, the most impactful areas. Really, the cybersecurity, artificial intelligence areas. As we become more technologically advanced, we'll see, I think, a lot more changes in those areas.
Wow. As I come to my second to the last question, as technology is taking over the world, how do you view technology in terms of what it's done to individuals' ability to effectively communicate interpersonal skills?
That's a great question. Can I answer? Do you want me to answer honestly, or do you want me to answer?
I want you to answer 100%.
Because I could be facetious about it. I could be facetious about it.
You know what? I would like you to be both honest and facetious.
Okay, well, so let me see. Wow. I believe in this day and age, one of the more difficult challenges is the fact that we have young people who don't really have interpersonal communication skills and don't really know how to open up communication channels to be able to articulate their position on specific topics or issues, because they've never really been put in a situation where they've had to do that. So if they're used to asking Google or asking, their Siri, or asking them questions, and then they're providing them a response. So it really, I say this quite a bit to my young people. I'm so glad I wasn't raised in this generation. I'm so glad I was raised in a generation that didn't have cell phones and we didn't have social media. So you couldn't catch anybody in doing anything that they weren't supposed to. You couldn't find anything out. It'd be too late. In this day and age, everything is instant. Everybody's got camera phones. Everybody's got, everybody's got the ability to be able to text and things of that nature. And so what it's done is it's made communication very difficult. I have a nephew who, and I have a goddaughter who they would literally be in the same room talking to each other, and they're texting each other, sitting in the game room, the TV room. I'm like, why don't y'all just talk? But that is the challenge that you have with technology. And what I've learned is, for this generation, this is their friend. This is not just a device. This is their friend. So when you're seeing this, they're talking to their friend, and that is how they cognitively, how they psychologically, how they view phones. It is a part of them. And so that is really what's going to be one of the more deeper challenges as we move forward. And, over the next 5-10 years, what will that look like? So your question is a very profound question. It's a very unique question, but it is a very difficult question to answer because, as we've already seen, I mean, how many instances have we seen of people walking across the street getting hit by cars because they were looking at their phones instead of looking up? Things that we wouldn't even think to do. This generation. So that interpersonal communication and communication channels, I think, is a very unique challenge, and it'll be interesting to see how this all shapes out over the next 5 to 10 years. I'm curious myself, but I don't have an answer for you. So if I'm being facetious, but
you know what you were answering. I worked for an organization for 3 years and held a national state leadership role for an organization called the Academic Center for California Community Colleges. And I was one of the board members. And that's a big deal within the California Community College structure. And one of the things that I had suggested was, we were doing a breakout, was creating a breakout on how to use the cell phone to improve instruction. Because I felt that they should now have courses where the work is done on the cell phone. And because the reality is, everyone is in love with their cell phone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people don't put down their cell phone.
No.
They do their YouTube. I'm a big YouTuber, and I'm old. And you know what? You're talking about people do their YouTube, their Instagram, their Google, their Facebook. Everything is on the cell phone. And I'm not sure if we're going to ever revert back to a point where we communicate and learn specifically just from reading, because the world has so much information in Google and Bing and all these other technological sources that gives you quick answers. I know young people who go to college and never pick up a book. Unfortunately,
that's true.
They do their entire work. And in fact, because I retired back in basically around January the 1st, 2024. So I'm coming up on 2 years. And one of the things I recall was dinging students accurately and passionately, because I would give them a topic to write about and very clear instructions. And I had a Google tracker. And they would just go to Google or Bing and just kind of copy something and throw it and say, "Oh, Professor Henderson." And I would mark them down for that. I wouldn't even give them the credit for it, because
exactly.
It was their own ideas. And so
right.
I'm wondering, how can we now take that passion and somehow integrate it into not only a leadership philosophy, but also integrate it into to be sort of like a curricular, I don't want to say mandate, but strong advisory, because I think it is very unique, it's very creative, and it definitely will keep young people going.
Sure. I agree with you conceptually. The problem I have was from an analytical standpoint, is they just don't know how to break down information. If you're constantly looking for information, or for, Google, or you're looking for Siri or some of these other artificial intelligence type of devices to feed you the information? When do you ever really learn how to analyze the information to be able to come up and conceptualize your own ideas? And I think that's the challenge that we have as academics now, is that, these young people, as you stated, they have these devices and they're on them all the time. And yes, we can create learning tools, online learning tools using them. But how do I know that they're actually processing the information and that they're able to analyze it and be able to come up with their own concepts? That's my challenge. I don't know about your challenge, if that was one that you experienced when you're doing instruction, but that for me is one of the more difficult challenges that I have.
I concur. I'm going to say this before I ask you your final question. I recall looking online and coming up with, it was some philosophy where people marry themselves. You know what? It was, but I want you to hear this. It was kind of funny. But
I gotta hear this. You gotta tell me this, Dr. Henderson. I didn't hear this.
They actually have a ceremony where they marry themselves. I mean,
really?
They walk down the aisle and they actually have a ceremony, a wedding, and they're marrying themselves. But I'm saying that because I'm laughing, because there was one gentleman overseas who married a cell phone.
Good Lord.
He had a ceremony where at the altar they had like this easel or something, but he had this cell phone up, and he married his cell phone. And They said, do you take your cell phone to be your lover, your communicator, your information? And he said yes. And it was a whole ceremony. Now that was a bit extreme, but I'm like, okay, I guess, he was so lonely or needed a companion to the point, because I'm assuming at one day they will probably make actual humans. That's kind of scary for people that don't have mates, that will probably be able, imagine, you could purchase your perfect wife.
Yes.
And program your own wife. They could say what you want them to say. They could, I'm not sure you could necessarily have the privacy that you want from them, but I'm sure there could be something that could be worked out. So it's kind of interesting that technology is not stopping. I think that's the fearful part of it. That at what point will it stop? And I don't want to use the word common sense, but it is common sense for me. But will common sense kick in? Because I see online, I'm online all the time, I see sort of wow things online now.
You do.
People are able to have companions where their companionship and their love of their life is all found online. And they have full enriching lives because they grew up without the ability to have social interaction. So, I don't know, that's a whole nother topic. Dr. Lewis.
We definitely have to have that conversation off the line. I'll be definitely interested in sharing some things as well, but you make some very, very great points about that. But it's true. Artificial intelligence is creating that right now, where you have, because you do have a lot of socially, awkward individuals out there who are not in relationships and want one, but don't know where to start. And so, having a programmed, artificially intelligent robot or or simulator, a simulator of some type, that is a thing. That is definitely a thing. So that's very interesting. It's a very good point.
Yes, Dr. Lewis, thank you so much. I was so enthralled. One of the enthralling and exciting points that I was able to cover when I was reading your background and your professional experience, I was like, wow, I had never met a Ph.D. scholar that was really into boxing. And so I was so excited about it. I am just really grateful for you taking the time, in terms of your evening there in Huntsville, Alabama, to allow me to speak with you. Having said that, Could you share any final thoughts or ideas, or do you have any final thoughts or ideas you would like to communicate just about your global experiences to our digital world?
I would say one of the things that I find fascinating and I enjoy is actually is publications. I enjoy writing, and doing research on some of the things that we're talking about even this evening. Um, I'll share something with you offline. I won't share with the public because yeah, but uh,
Okay.
but I'm working on a project, and I definitely will love to talk to you about it. And it's a project that I believe that it's definitely cutting edge. It definitely exposes some nuances that we deal with on a day-to-day basis that we don't really talk about, and so. And I think it's a very valuable conversation that we need to start having. And so I'll just leave that intrigue there, and I won't say any more about it. And then with you and we can talk about now what I'm thinking of, what I'm working on. And so I talked to Dr. Burrell, and he said, "Yeah, I think that's going to be pretty good what you're working on." So,
Wow.
so I'm excited about it. But I don't want, like I said, I can't share too much with the public right now. But obviously, you and I can talk about that offline. But when it's done, it's going to be it's definitely, I won't call it a masterpiece, but it will be something like it. So
Wow.
looking forward to it.
Well, you have shared with our audience this evening great information, innovation, creativity, passion, commitment, innovation, all those wonderful descriptions of a professional who's had an invigorating career. As the CEO and president of Professor for Life Incorporated, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule. I promise you, one day in my journey of going around the world, I'm going to take a plane trip to Huntsville, Alabama. I've never been to Huntsville, Alabama, but I'm gonna promise you that before God takes me home one day, I'm gonna have to come out and take you to Huntsville, Alabama, and watch you teach some of these kids.
For sure. And you can always come out. I actually will be seeing you soon. I'll be out there in Oakland here pretty soon, so I'll keep you posted on that as well.
And please let me know so that we can hook up and we can meet face to face. But
Yes, sir.
until that time comes, it's been a delight to interact with you, kind doctor and sir, and I hope to be talking with you soon.
Yes, sir. Humble. Thank you.
Take care. God bless you.
God bless you, sir.